Okay, we got off to a good start to the season with a win against Utah State. I thought it was a great effort by our guys from start to finish. We weren't real efficient throughout parts of the game, but did enough to get the win and hung in there to the bitter end, and it was really good to get that win under our belt. Moving forward to Weber State, this week we've got a lot of things to address that we got to get better at, and that's our focal point. Obviously, is taking care of our deficiencies and trying to strengthen those. I think there were 7 or 8 Division I teams that got beat by 1AA teams this past weekend, so that certainly will get our players' attention, and we know that we got to play well. And Weber's coming off a big win, a lot of offense, rushed the ball extremely well, and really put up a lot of points. And so we've got our work cut out for us on defense, but like I said, more than anything this week, we got to fix what we're not doing so well. So, questions?
Coach, can you talk about what you saw from Travis Wilson week 1? What kind of progress did you see from him?
Saw a lot of growth and maturity when you compare it to last season. Now, we saw that same growth and maturity in spring ball and throughout fall camp, but obviously he hadn't had a chance to show it in the game until this past week. But he made great decisions. He threw the ball very efficiently. He was over 300 yards on only 28 attempts, which is outstanding if it only takes you 28 attempts to get over 300 yards. Took care of the ball as far as not turning it over with interceptions. And just ran the offense. Did a good job of staying poised and making sure that the offense ran as we wanted it to.
After the game, you weren't very pleased with some of the aspects of your offensive line play. When you went back and looked at the tape, was it an effort thing? Was it a scheme thing? Was it an opponent thing? And is that easily fixed or cleaned up this week?
It wasn't an effort thing at all. There's no question that we had great effort from all the players throughout the entire game. So that was something that was a positive. It was really, we got to do a better job hitting movement with our offensive line. Utah State did a nice job slanting and gap exchanging, and we got to be able to pick that up. We didn't handle the blitz very well. They pressured us a bunch, over 50% of the time, and so we've got to do a better job at not only picking up blitzes but exploiting. When people blitz, you got to be able to have an answer and make them pay for that. And so those are 2 of the areas right there. I didn't think we ran the football violently enough. The run game needs to be more productive and more physical. But there was a lot of good things. I don't want to put a negative spin on it because there was a lot of good things we did in the game, but there's a lot to work on.
Coach, the loss of Kenneth Scott, obviously a big one. How much of a drop-off is it to Anthony Denham and Sean Fitzgerald, or do you expect eventually that get back up to where Kenneth was?
Well, the guys, Anthony and Sean that you mentioned, those guys stepped up big time in the game. They're receiver as far as statistics after all was said and done, and so I thought they both responded. It's a big loss losing Kenny Scott. He's him and Drez, as we mentioned several times throughout the course of camp and game week. They're our 2 best receivers. They had separated themselves from the rest of the group, but both Fitzgerald and Denham both stepped up and really performed well for us Thursday night.
I know it's an obvious question, but it's been a couple of years since you've been able to get off to a 2-0 start. How big of a deal is it to get that mindset and get that winning track started before you open Pac-12 play? Well,
I think it's a big deal on a couple different levels. Number one, as you mentioned before Pac-12 play begins, and number 2, with the schedule laid out, how it lays out this year, with a bunch of home games at the beginning half of the schedule, we need to gain some momentum, and I think it's important that we take advantage of the home schedule early in the season, because it gets very difficult as the season goes on.
Were you pleased with the effort of your secondary, your corners and your safeties in the pass game?
Effort, yes. Outcome, not so much. Chucky Keaton had a big day throwing the football, and our techniques were a little bit sloppy. Our zone drops, and it wasn't all the defensive backs. The linebackers didn't have the route awareness that we need in the zone coverages. Defensive line, I think we can get better pass rush, which will speed things up for us. But overall, our pass defense was very, very below average, I guess you could say. Does that make sense? Very, very below average. So.
Kyle, after just the first week, aside from the captains, Travis and Trevor, any guys in the locker room or on the practice field you're seeing really step up and become those vocal leaders that you look for?
Well, all four captains are doing a great job of that. Tenny and JT Tofiano, the other two, are really responding. Eric Rowe is a guy that is a great leader for us. VJ Fajoko out of the linebacker core. Jake Murphy out of the tight end position. So, yeah, there's 5 or 6 other guys in addition to the captains who have really been instrumental to the leadership of the team.
Off topic on the play part, but what do you think of the new closed captioning services that Rice Eccles Stadium is offering to fans who are hearing impaired?
I think it's great. Anything we can do to make the game and the experience at Rice Eccles more accessible to everybody, I think that's a positive thing, and I like it, and I think that it's going to be a benefit to a lot of people.
Coach, can you talk a little bit about the run game and what's going on there?
Our running game, as far as the Utah State game, like I said, going forward, well, as I mentioned, we've got to be more efficient. We got some yards, 140 or somewhere in that range of rush yardage, but our yards per carry wasn't good enough. Too many plays that were stalemated, where we had little or no gain. The goal line stand was disappointing. When we had a chance to get a touchdown there late in the game and ended up settling for a field goal. And so there's just a lot of things that we need to clean up. I don't think it's a scheme issue. We have a solid rushing attack as far as the schematics, but we just got to be more violent and more be better at what we're doing in the run game.
You mentioned that you made some drastic defensive changes at halftime in that ball game. Without getting too much into X's and O's, are those changes that we could see throughout the season, or was that just an in-game adjustment for Utah State?
Well, I think more of an in-game adjustment as per what was happening in that particular game, and the changes we made are things that we already have in our package. We didn't put in any new coverages that we don't have in the defensive playbook, but we certainly were in need of some different looks in that second half, and not only in the coverage but in the front play. We made some changes up front to help us out in the run game and with the pass rush, and so I think that you're going to see that, and that's part of college football and coaching is obviously halftime adjustments, and a lot of games are won or lost based on halftime adjustments. I thought our guys did a nice job at halftime.
Were you at all concerned with the missed opportunities of bringing down Chucky Keaton in the backfield in the pocket, or do you just attribute that to how good of a player he is?
Both. He's a tremendous player, and he's very difficult to sack, and we had him, I don't know how many times, a lot of times back there in the backfield, and he'd break 2, 3, sometimes 4 tackles or make people miss, and great players do that. He's a great player, and the great players bring a whole bag of minuses to the game, and they hand them out each play to defenders as the play goes on.
Coach, do you look at the running backs as running back by committee type thing now with Bubba Poole, as I guess upgraded to a co-starter with Kelvin York? And I know you don't talk about injuries, but you expect Kelvin to be ready to go this week?
Bubba and Kelvin are 1 and 1A, as we mentioned last week, and they're both on equal footing, and really both bring a different skill set to the table. And Carl Williams is not far behind the other two. He's got his role as well, and we really think he's a good addition to those 2 guys. And then Lucky Radley, who you didn't get to see much of at all in the game on Thursday, is still a guy that we think can help us out.
And then do you use the Eastern Washington upset and games like that as motivation so the team doesn't look past Weber State?
Without a doubt, and we will address that in the team meeting today. There was, as I mentioned, 8, I think if our count is correct, 8 teams in Division I that got beat by 1AA. It's not 1AA anymore, FCS teams. So.
Other than just not having a letdown this week and getting another win, is there something in particular you're hoping to accomplish this week with the Weber State game?
Well, yeah, as I mentioned, the things that we were not good at in the Utah State game. It's football coaches, they study film, they look for weaknesses, and if you can't handle the blitz or hit movement on defense, or with your offensive line, or cover a fade with your corners. I mean, they're going to try to exploit everything that we didn't do very well, and so we've got to get that addressed, or else you're going to keep seeing it week after week, and that's the nature of coaching. You know, you see a soft spot in the PAT field goal protection, you're going to go right at it, and that's something that the main objective this week, like I said, is to shore up those areas of weakness that we had in the Utah State game.
Coach, you talked a lot about stepping up the offense, the tempo of the offense. Were you guys satisfied with the tempo?
Very much so. I think tempo is overrated. I mean, I hear so much about tempo; it's starting to be a little irritating. And you know, if my information is correct, there was 10 teams in Division I football that snapped it 88 times or more this past weekend, and 7 of those teams lost. And so there's a point of diminishing returns for tempo, and it's not about tempo; it's about execution and the players that are, you know, playing for you. And so tempo is all fine and dandy, but like I said, there's a point where if you start to go too fast, I think it has a negative effect. And so I think we snapped it 74, 75 times, which is just about right as far as we're concerned.
Coach, with Kenneth Scott's injury, who are you looking on offense to really step up to fill the hole that he leaves?
It's got to be Anthony Denham and Sean Fitzgerald, the two guys that really stepped up in the game on Thursday. And in addition, we've got to get the tight ends more involved. You know, Jake Murphy and Wesley Tonga are two of our best playmakers. And as coaches, I think we need to do a better job featuring those guys and getting them the ball more and making them more impactful to the game. And so the combination of those two things, the receivers that were behind Kenneth and getting the tight ends more involved.
Cal, you talked a little about Travis's pass efficiency and how improved that was. I think it was his second 300-yard game. Do you see more 300-yard passing games out of Travis? Can you just talk a little about his pass efficiency?
Sure hope so, and that's something that last year was lacking. You know, we couldn't get a 300-yard throw game, and if we can continue to do that, and you know, as I mentioned, get the run game where we think it can be, then I think we can be a pretty potent offense. But you know, we got to keep working, and if Travis, you know, one game doesn't a season make, but we saw some really good things for the first game out of all aspects of the throwing game, with the protection, the route structures, and where Travis put the ball.
Is he just showing more patience, or what is he doing
Better decision making, a little more patience, more command of the offense. You know, he understands concepts better than he did last year. Coach Erickson has streamlined things a little bit, so it's a little easier to grasp. And we're just trying to play to Travis's strengths. And he's a better runner than people give him credit for, as I've said over and over. And I think you saw that a couple times in the game on Thursday night, where he escaped the pocket and made some big plays and made a big first down for us in the 4-minute offense, running that Q power where he got the necessary first down yardage. So he's a guy that is much improved, and we need to see that trend continue.
And then last thing is how'd the play calling go with Dennis up in the box and just the three, you know, having Brian and the different coaches involved? Did everything run smoothly the first game?
Yeah, I think we're very satisfied with the channels of communication and the lines of communication, and I don't think we were disoriented or mispersonneled or anything on any of the snaps. You know, we didn't have to burn any timeouts because of which you typically see that in the first game, where there's a personnel mistake or something's not correct. But I thought in that respect everything went very smoothly.
Just a follow-up to Dennis Erickson. You mentioned that he streamlined the playbook a little bit for Travis there, but even still, that game plan seemed to be very effective against a very good Utah State defense. Mm-hmm. It's got to be pretty satisfying knowing that you've got his eyes up there, a very experienced pair of eyes in the booth guiding you with that offensive game plan.
Yeah, without a doubt. And he's, as I've said all throughout the spring and fall camp, he's been a great addition to our staff. And you know, just feel that it's been very positive so far. Now, again, one game is not, you know, the end-all, be-all, but I think from what we saw in game one, I believe that it's been a big help for us and a big benefit.
Talk a bit about Andy Phillips and his performance with the 3 field goals and the onside kick and how he did.
Yeah, outstanding. And, you know, I was bragging on Andy through fall camp, but with an asterisk, saying he had never kicked in a game yet, and don't get too excited about things at this point. But now that he's kicked in a game and that has translated, you know, what he's done in practice, translated to the game, The onside kick that he executed to perfection or near perfection was really the play of the game. I think that was the biggest momentum changer and the thing that sparked us. And so for a kid that had never played in a football game at any level, in any circumstances, he'd been a skier and a soccer player, phenomenal poise and mental toughness that he showed, and couldn't be more pleased with what he did.
Coach, you mentioned Carl Williams coming up close behind the other two. What does he need to do to step up his game, and what did you see out of Poole in the game that you liked?
Okay, Carl, he's a physical back. He's a bigger back. He's 230 plus. First thing he needs to do is hang on to the football. We put it on the ground, which was our lone turnover, which can't happen. I mean, you got to secure the football, and so that's job one. Missed a couple reads in the zone on the zone schemes. Especially particularly down the goal line. There was one that would have been a walk-in had he been able to see the daylight. But he's just got to keep getting better, and there's no harder worker on the football team than Carl Williams. He is a guy that puts in all the time necessary, both in the film room and the practice field, in the weight room. He does it all. So I expect that he's going to continue to get better. Bubba Poole, I didn't think Bubba really got untracked in that game. He's more elusive and more dynamic than what I think you saw in the game Thursday night. Now, a lot of that's due to Utah State's defense. They're a very good defensive football team, but I think Bubba Poole is going to make some very big plays along the way for us this season.
How much of your offensive playbook did we see last week, or is it just going to be a matter of execution, or do you have more to roll out?
Well, there's more to roll out, but again, that's a week-to-week things, and there's things that'll be in the playbook that aren't in it right now based on the opponent. When you study the opponent film and you see things that you may be able to exploit, you put a thing or two in each week for that exact reason or those circumstances. And so I think as per what we were facing against Utah State, new defensive coordinator, a lot of unknowns going into that game, I think we had a really nice game plan, but again, you're going to see that alter and modify as the season goes on based on what we start to do well as what the opponent that particular week is vulnerable to.
What's your read on Weber State? What was your takeaway from their win over the weekend against Stephen F. Austin?
A lot of offense, over 300 yards rushing, 50 points. Receiver had a big day. The receiver went over 100 yards. And so, the coordinator has Oregon background, and so very similar to what just about everybody's doing nowadays with the spread and the hurry up, and so we got to, like I said, we got to be ready and do things better than we did last week defensively by a long shot.
You talked about your film work leading up to that game, in knowing that onside kick, or in running that onside kick. Nate talked about being a little tipped off with film study on the play that led to the sack fumble and the recovery. How much pride do you take as a coaching staff and your players in the film room, knowing and the recognition that comes from that in their ability to be able to dissect what an opponent might be able to do?
Great deal of pride, and I stress to our guys all the time, film studies is as important, if not more so, than practice itself. I mean, being able to study your opponent, know exactly based on split or alignment or stance or all those little detail things that oftentimes make the difference you pick up in film study. And I tell them, the coaches watch film for hours on end, but a player that's watching concentrated film on one guy, the guy he's going to line up across, he can pick up things that the coach can't because the coach is seeing everything. And so I harp on them all the time that film study is absolutely critical, and it's got to be hand in hand with practice. It's every bit as important, as I mentioned, as practice, and our guys really take that to heart and do a good job of getting in the film room all week, and they have their iPads where they can watch it on their downtime, and so it's invaluable. Film work is an absolute must.
The offense seemed to struggle trying to punch the ball in the goal line inside the 5-yard line against Utah State. What do you guys have to do better going forward to kind of correct that?
Well, as I mentioned, we missed a couple reads with the back where the hole was actually there, but we didn't find it, and so that's part of it. More violence in the run game, as I mentioned, being able to roll people off the ball a little bit better and create more movement with the double teams, and maybe a little more. We might have got a little predictable down there in this game, and maybe a little more diversity in our offensive play calling down in tight to keep people honest instead of just packing the box in and defending the zone cut snap after snap.
More questions for Coach Witt?
Thanks, guys.
Thanks a lot.
It should be right outside.